Hello, and welcome to Holistic Ambition, where we talk with visionary leaders who are redefining what it means to be ambitious. We cover ways you can live with more well-being, meaning, and fun in your career, business, and relationships. I'm your host, Stephanie Thoma, career coach for ambitious professionals and author of Confident Introvert. Today, we have Colleen with us. With over 3 years of working in Austin real estate, Colleen Lord has a deep understanding of life in Central Texas and her clients' needs. She has a business degree from Villanova University, where she was also a Division I athlete in swimming. Her background in marketing and sales, specifically in ad tech and retail and personal styling, has given her a deep understanding of people and how to simplify complex problems. Whether you are looking to buy your first home or relocate, she can help. She says people over profit always. It's not my job to convince you to buy a house, but I am here to provide solutions and make your goals a reality. All right. Well, welcome, Colleen. And, we're in Austin, Texas. Can you tell us a bit about the market in general? Let's just dive in. Hello.
Yeah, thank you. Hello. Good to be here. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I would love to tell you guys a little bit about the market. We were chatting a little bit off camera, of course, before this, just how every market truly is so different right now. We often, other realtors and we often talk about how it's like the tale of two markets. So depending where you are, it can feel like one of two things. One being it's like super competitive, kind of like it felt like for us back in 2020, 2021, where stuff was just flying off the shelves and you couldn't think or make any decisions quick enough. Obviously, we had that a couple of years ago, and so it slowed down a little bit for us here in the Austin market, but I actually look at that as a good thing. It's easier to make decisions, actually ruminate on what you're doing as a consumer, because gosh, it is such a large asset to purchase, obviously, a home or your first home. So I actually look at it as a good thing that we have some time to make decisions. As far as like stats, I know you're probably like a numbers girl, and a lot of people out there are really into the numbers. Year over year, so this time last year, the average median home price has dropped probably less than 0.5%. Well, probably less than 1%. We'll just call it around 1%. So you can look at that from like a holistic standpoint as it's pretty even. It's not like we're like plummeting price-wise, but it's also not like we're skyrocketing. So I know a lot of the projections change month to month for where we're going to end up this year, but I think we'll probably end up being pretty flat as well. So stable markets, still with all the jobs that we have here, all the tech, we have a pretty like diverse job market and industries here. So that keeps us pretty
mean? So I'm just going to speak for the people that are newbies and like, what are these real estate terms? So when you say that it's a flat market, so if it's going down a little bit, how can it still be flat?
Right. Well, those numbers, that number that I just kind of, shot out, that was for the Austin Round Rock MSA. So it includes the suburbs. We could get into numbers with just Austin specifically. But I think what it really speaks to is just that we've had more inventory come on the market. I don't know if you remember back in 2020, 2021, it was what we call less than a month worth of inventory, meaning like if no other homes came on the market, we wouldn't have housing inventory in a month. And that's just crazy. And that was a big reason why prices are rocketing. But I think we still have a lot of demand from the buyer side, right? We have millennials, Gen Z, people coming into the market, coming of age 20s, getting married, starting families, wanting to plant roots. So I think the demand for being in Austin is still so high. Now we have more inventory now to offset that crazy skyrocketing of prices. But I think that's why it's remained flat, is because we still have a lot of demand, but we have more supply too. So it's a little bit more balanced.
Awesome. That sort of equalization. So that, to your point, that now there's more space to breathe, and maybe it's not like, okay, get your offer in yesterday and cross your fingers, even if it's not what you want, where there gets to be more thoughtful decisions. And, let's say that someone listening is, maybe they feel like, okay, I should buy my own home. I said that I'd own a home at this age or at this life milestone. Or how do people know? What are the signs that they are actually ready to buy a home?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think if you feel like you're in a good place with your work and you've been in a job for, at least 2-3 years, right? And you're comfortable with where you're at, the projection looks good, maybe you're getting promotions, then that is a good sign. I think if I know a lot of people obsess about their credit scores and they often like discount themselves because they have a less than perfect credit score. But often you don't need to have, an 800 credit score to be a great candidate for a loan, for a home loan. So I think if you're like anywhere above like 680, you're probably in a great standing for a first time home buyer specific loan. And I would say those are the major things, as long as you don't have any like crazy debt, special debts, situation. I think it's definitely okay to have a car loan. Where you run into trouble is when you're paying, over $1,000 a month for the car. That can be like a real wedge in the home loan process. But yeah, I think stable income, and just having an understanding too of like where you'd fall with current interest rates, like not relying always on like the online calculators, but actually having a conversation with someone and just testing out like what would be a good monthly payment for you. Because that's really the indicator, right, of like how much you can withstand every month. It's not just the sales price, it's how much you're gonna be actually paying a month. So I know that was a really long answer for what are the signs, but I think stable income, like pretty good credit history, and you don't have a huge amount of debt.
Well, and I'm curious, so those are great financial markers. And
Mm-hmm.
how about choosing a location? Because yeah, what's the best place for someone to buy a home, and should they necessarily live in it? Like how do you walk people through those considerations if they're not totally sure where they want to be?
Yeah, where within one city?
Or even within the world, I know, or we can go a little more micro.
Yeah, well, I think the location really comes down to lifestyle. There really is no wrong answer, right? A lot of times what ties us to one location is job, right? Maybe not, with remote work over the past couple of years being such a prevalent trend, but I think now people are feeling a little bit more tied to one as people going back to the office and all that. So I think it just depends on lifestyle. Like I know like here in Austin, a lot of people still like to be pretty close to downtown if they can. We have a pretty small town feeling here, just in terms of the geography. It's pretty easy to get downtown from like most places in Austin, 20-25 minutes, right? So I think it just depends on like, where do you want to be? Do you want to be close to parks? Do you want to, what do you do on the weekend? Like how important are those things? And that probably also plays into like stage of life, right? Do you have young kids? Are you downsizing? Are you retiring, right? Like it's all of those factors play into location, I think. So it's kind of a non-answer that I always give to people. It's really based off of your lifestyle and what fits you. Because at the end of the day, you can't make a bad decision as long as you're not planning on selling the home in a year or two. That's when people get into the bad financial decisions, right? So as long as you like you've researched the location, you're comfortable being there for 3-5 years, then you're good.
Yeah, I've also heard that it can be beneficial to buy a home in your hometown where you are either there or someone who can keep an eye on it. But like specifically for someone who is considering moving to Austin or buying a home within Austin, what are the reasons to buy a house in this market, like from the perspective of lifestyle? And then what are some things that maybe people that need or want those things, they should probably not be in Austin?
That's a good question. I think the reasons to buy in Austin, is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Reasons to buy in Austin? Well, I think like a lot of young people are here and see the value of being here. We have pretty good weather, I guess, depending on who you ask, right? Like I like hot weather, so it's fine for me. Good weather, like I kind of said before, the job market is really good. There's lots of opportunities for people. Certainly tech is bringing people and keeping people here. I think central location too in the United States, like we might not have like, the largest of, we don't have like an international airport per se, but it's still a pretty good hub to get places. So if you're a traveler, you can get to the Austin airport, right? Like pretty accessibly. It's like pretty central in terms of other, I've lived in Houston where there's multiple airports and we had to drive, 30-40 minutes to get into an airport, but it's pretty accessible here. If you're a traveler and need to travel for work, you can get to the East Coast pretty easily, you can get to the West Coast pretty easily. So I see that as sort of being a trend for, even though people might be going back to work and their normal as is flow of job, like I think travelers still have a pretty easy time here. But yeah, I think just general lifestyle, like everyone's really laid back here and friendly and just kind of like very open. It's a free thinking city, I like to think. That's what I've noticed from living other places. So I think when people visit here, they really get that sense, and then that either draws them to pick up everything and move here, or maybe they've been here for a long time and have stayed. So I think that that's not necessarily home specific, but I think those are the reasons people like Austin a lot. And therefore start looking for investing opportunities, or they, want to relocate here.
Yeah, and I would be interested in any trends in layouts or any certain neighborhoods that you're seeing that you estimate will kind of be turning a corner. But before that, is there anything that comes to mind if someone's considering moving here? Maybe there's a lifestyle factor that's like they should be aware of that. Hey, if you want this or need this, this is not the place.
I think weather is a big one. I was
Okay.
actually recently helping someone that was considering moving from Canada, and they were initially choosing between Arlington, Virginia, Seattle, and Austin, because they worked at Amazon, and so those were kind of their three options for U.S. hubs. And I think because they were so used to Canadian weather, they ended up picking Seattle because it just felt a little bit more familiar, both like proximity, obviously, to where they're, from, and then also the weather conditions, I think, are a little bit more friendly for people that aren't used to hot weather. So I think like that's what I see, like the murmur online, people kind of complaining about Austin. If anything, it's like weather and just general crowd,
for 3
yeah,
months. Yeah.
exactly. That can be rough for people. I grew up in Houston, so I'm kind of used to the hot weather, but I agree. Some days, August, September, you're like, okay, come on, are we done with this triple digits yet? It's crazy. So yeah, I'd say like the other thing is like people think of Texas as being really cheap, I think, especially if you don't have a context for visiting often or living here before. But Austin, the cost of living in Austin has gone up quite a bit in the past couple of years, like anywhere else, right? But just because we've had a lot of people and businesses flock here, it's not the cheapest, place to live anymore. It's certainly different from, West Texas or, middle of nowhere. So I think the reality of Texas is it's still a favorable place to do business and to live, but it's not cheap. And we do have higher property taxes than I think some other states and people are used to. So we don't have income tax, which is really nice. But then kind of the caveat to that is that we do have higher property taxes. So that is sort of one thing to think about as well.
Yeah, and when it comes to any certain layouts, there is, everything's bigger in Texas, right? We've all probably heard this. And if you're in Texas, maybe you're kind of like laughing it off, like, hey, I'm from here. Like maybe that's not true. But is that with home buying trends, are you seeing compared to other parts in the world that is the case?
That homes are bigger in Texas.
Yeah.
I don't think they're necessarily bigger in Texas, but I have been seeing some interesting stats and numbers lately just about, the average home in the United States is probably much bigger than what most of us actually need, right? And so it comes into question, okay, like if we want affordability to improve, then we probably need to rethink how large we're building, right? Like, do we really need 4,000 square foot homes for most of us, or can we get by with, a three or four bedroom, 2 baths, and it's like 2,000 square feet, right? Like, is that enough? I don't know. I'm not prepared to say yes or no. I certainly think if you have a large family, you probably do need that much space. And maybe that's why, moving out to the suburbs is probably more favorable for you. You have bigger developments, master planned communities. So, that plays into factor with location, like I was saying before, and then lifestyle, of course, family, no family, how much space and yard do you really need? The funny thing too about space is that a lot of people have dogs, right? So they need the yard, they want some form of like a fenced in something. So even if they're okay with a smaller home, maybe even like a home that has like a shared wall, they still really have that deal breaker of like, no, I need a little yard for my dogs. So that's a funny funny trend as it relates to layouts as well. But no, I think it's an interesting question because land is so expensive, right? Especially in the city. And so it is an interesting question to that, I think will challenge us for the years to come, especially as we need more affordability and we need more homes for people that are affordable. So it probably, we might see a trend of homes being built, especially in close to the city where they're a little bit smaller and maybe on smaller lots.
Oh, interesting. And yeah, that probably takes into account family sizes and, if you're one person or a few people living together versus 10 people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm curious, what are some neighborhoods to watch in Austin that maybe they haven't really taken off yet? And actually, I mean, East Austin, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
has that already taken off, or maybe it's still in progress?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm in Hyde Park currently, and I know when I talk about it out and about, people are like, "Oh, that's a really great neighborhood," and so it's interesting to learn about all these things.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, trends in real estate is kind of like up and down and up and down. There's always going to be kind of like certain neighborhoods that maybe are really popular one year and then maybe another year they're not, but then maybe they come back. But, Hyde Park's probably always going to be super popular just it's so close to everything. But yeah, I think honestly, I might be again a little bit biased because I live in South Austin, but I love South Austin. It's really been booming the past year or so. I see a lot of great opportunities for first-time home buyers down there because of the proximity to downtown. It's,
Barton
on a
Spring.
local road. Yeah, you can get there in 15, 20 minutes. If you take 35, maybe a little bit longer, but yeah, it's really close to a lot of things. They're really the city's putting a lot of money, and there's a lot of businesses coming down to South Austin. There's going to be, the bars and the restaurants on South Manchac down here. That's kind of like a young hub central for going out and eating out. So I think we'll see more of those types of things pop up. And because I think the complaint with South Austin is that there's not enough to do. So I think that will change in the past couple of years, or in the next couple of years. But I see a lot of great opportunities down here. You have cute, like 3-bedroom, 1-story, like ranch style homes that Austin and Central Texas are sort of known for. So I really think that that's a great opportunity. I also think Southeast Austin hasn't really exploded quite yet, but I see a lot of potential there. So think like the east side of 35, but still like south of Riverside. And you mentioned East Austin. Yes, I think we think of East Austin as sort of like our Brooklyn, where it's kind of weird. It's kind of like, you could turn a corner at any second and it's like, okay, ooh, maybe a little iffy. But it's gotten a lot better over the past couple of years. And there's so much building. There's a lot of what we call infill building, where, you get these like rundown homes and private builders come in and they, tear down that home, build a more modern structure on it. So not a planned community per se, but just sort of like one-off, newer modern homes. So I think a lot of people are still liking East Austin because of the central location, but yes, you can afford a little bit more compared to say, Hyde Park or like some of the core central Austin neighborhoods.
Yeah, so when it comes to interest rate trends, what are you seeing there for Austin?
Oh my gosh. It's been really difficult because I sympathize with anyone that's been trying to like make a good decision and trying to like really, afford more. And the final piece sort of being interest rates. I think it does affect your affordability a lot. And so it's been tough to see like the projections kind of saying that like, oh, we'll be back down into the high fives, by the end of 2024. At least that was the initial projection that we were seeing at the end of last year, beginning of this year, but I don't honestly see that happening now. The updated projections are that probably through the next couple of years, maybe like through 2026 even, we'll probably be in this kind of like mid to high sixes environment. And I think that just is because inflation has been so stubborn. The latest like metrics show that it's like, okay, it's pretty stable, but it's not cooling down because our economy is so strong. So that is like the frustrating thing, I'd say. It's good that our economy is strong, of course, but it is unfortunate because like we kind of stated before, prices haven't come down as much as, a buyer that's looking to buy would want. And that, coupled with a higher interest rate, that does make it hard. So I think a lot of people are waking up to the fact that, okay, I just need to make the right decision for me right now. I want to buy, I want, to start growing wealth through real estate. So I'm just going to maybe buy at a little bit of a lower price point than I maybe would have 2 years ago. And I'll just have my starter home and start here and then, build equity, let that appreciation ride out, and then maybe sell and trade up for my next home in a couple of years. So I think, but then there's also the other segment of the population that's just going to wait, and they have this idea that I'll just wait for, a 3% interest rate to come back. And I totally get it, because we were spoiled for a little while where money was so cheap during COVID. And
was it around 3% then?
Oh my gosh, yeah. There's some people that are locked in at like under 3%, which is so great for them. But it is a little bit troubling when I hear people say that they want to wait for that to come back, because I just don't think it ever will, unfortunately. And if you think about the times that we did see this like sub 4% interest rate environment, it was when the economy was in just distress, right? And so the government was trying to stimulate the economy. And those two times in recent history were obviously COVID. And then the other time was after the financial crisis, when we were in recovery for the next, 5 to 10 years. So it's sort of like, what are you rooting for, right? Are you rooting for like a crash in the economy and for money to be cheap again? Or would you rather just sort of figure it out now, make a smart purchasing decision with the conditions of the market now? Or are you just gonna, totally bank on the inevitable, or not the inevitable, are you gonna bank on something crazy happening? So it's kind of just like, what are you betting on, right?
Yeah, all great considerations. And, as we wrap up, I do have a few closing questions. So the first one is, how do you define ambition?
Well, I know you sent me a questionnaire before, and I can't even remember what I said, but I think ambition, to me, like the first word that comes to mind is just like having the guts to do something without knowing like how it's going to turn out. And I think just like speaking to my own life so far, I feel like I've taken these like jumps and none of them really connect, but I just sort of like went for one thing, like, oh, that looks interesting, let me try that, see how it works, and then I learned something from it, right? And then maybe I had some pain points too, but then I wrapped it into like kind of a new path and a new journey. So I would say like that is how I have, I guess, been ambitious in my career journey so far, is just like, okay, I'm going to completely take what I learned here, and this is an interesting insight, let me like do something completely different with it.
Yeah, I love that, having the guts to make a change, do something different. And actually, before we get to the other couple questions, I'm curious if you have any examples that you're comfortable sharing, maybe even as it pertains to your transition into real estate, where you were like, okay, let's make the shift.
Yeah. I by accident ended up working in the retail industry. So I worked for Nordstrom for a couple of years. I actually, if you want to like work it all the way back for how I ended up there, I was working in tech for a couple of years in the Bay Area, and I got laid off like very suddenly. And so I was like, actually, that gave me a second to think about like, did I actually really like doing that? And I landed on the fact that I don't think I did. I think I was actually pretty miserable, and that was like a blessing in disguise. So then, I took a couple weeks off and was really thinking about like, what do I want to do? And I was kind of like, well, why don't I just do something I think I would enjoy, just purely enjoy? And I literally walked into a Nordstrom one day and I was like, hire me. And so I ended up working there for 3 years. Like I thought I was just going to work there for a couple weeks to, tide me over until I could find a real job. But I actually really enjoyed it. I love the fast pacedness of it. I loved like being one-on-one in person with clients. And then I was slowly but surely able to like build up a client book. And so I was able to like kind of run my own business, which is really awesome. And then that got me thinking, well, why, like I could run my own business. Like I could do something like this. And, no shade to the retail world. I think I was just thinking a little bit bigger though, after a couple of years in that space. And I was like, being on my feet all the time was pretty exhausting as well. So I was like, how can I how can I do this, but in like a different industry, one that maybe will support my goals a little bit differently. And, ended up talking to a couple people in real estate, trying to figure out, what's this all about exactly. And, after chatting with them, they encouraged me to get my license to see, if it would work. And I was like pleasantly surprised. I learned so much in the process of getting licensed, and it opened my eyes to so much. And now I feel like I totally love like teaching this stuff to people. And so I would have never thought that I would have been in that position unless I like made the leap, I guess. So
Yeah,
definition of like not knowing what you're getting into, but then being pleasantly surprised.
I love that journey of really being intuitively led, and maybe it takes a little kick in the pants to be able to be like, wait, how do I actually feel about this thing? And then those
Mm-hmm.
steps show you more of what you want. So yeah, I mean, defining ambition as, having the guts. And similar to that, my next question is what does holistic ambition mean to you?
Holistic ambition. Well, I think for me, it means like kind of applying it to your life, like maybe not just for work, or a career, but also having that mindset and like just being honest with yourself, like through every step of the way, in your relationships, in, I don't know, with family, with friends, with how you want to spend your day, right? It's like, what is serving me, what is not, and just like not having the fear of people judging you for any of your decisions.
Yeah. So it sounds like, ambition to you is having the guts to go ahead and do something. And then the holistic piece is the process of, before you take the gutsy move, do it with a sense of inner knowing and checking in.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, gosh, thank you for all of your insights and stuff when it comes to the real estate world. And for those that want to stay connected with you and learn more about your work, how can they do that?
Yeah, probably the easiest way to reach me these days is on Instagram. So my username is just at Colleen_Lord. I post all kinds of fun property tours, educational content about real estate on there. Feel free to send me a message. I also have like a link in my bio in there if you wanted to set like a 15-minute work with me call.
Woohoo. All right. Well,
Woo!
thank you so much for your time today, Colleen. And thank you at home for tuning in and watching. Consider this your invitation to subscribe to be the very first to know of the next Holistic Ambition speaker in our series. Have a wonderful day. Until next time.